My chair is not as creaky as it used to be. That's good. Greetings, travelers. Welcome back to House CM. Today, let's talk about some encounter design. Let's also define what an encounter is in the context of the game. Now, the internet says an encounter is a meeting, especially one that is unplanned, unexpected, or brief. It also can be a hostile or adversarial confrontation. Those are some mighty big words. I'm not but the humble pirate. Using this definition through the lens of a tabletop role-playing game perspective, this is typically defined as something that your party comes across or encounters during their adventure. I don't know if encounter is the best word to use over something like event, but we're going to use it because the term seems to live in the tabletop role-playing game zeitgeist. This definition also states that it can be a hostile or adversarial conversation. Yeah, I guess it could be an adversarial conversation or adversarial confrontation, but it doesn't have to be. It could be an unexpected river crossing, a broken bridge, or even a door. Whatever it is, the first step I take when I'm designing encounters for my homebrew campaign is to answer these 4 questions. Number 1 is, where is this encounter taking place and where are your players at? Are they currently traveling through a forest or a dungeon or a snowy tundra? Or are you on the elemental plane of fire? The second part of this question is really only important if you are using terrain to build out this encounter, so to speak. And you basically need to know, where are your players located on the map? What is their marching order? Is that relevant for this encounter? Number 2. What's the goal of the encounter? Are your players trying to cross this bridge, get from point A to point B? Are they tasked with killing all the enemies in the room? What about lasting long enough to finish casting a complex spell that takes several rounds? Maybe the goal is to escape or, again, open the door. Honestly, really, don't underestimate opening doors. Opening doors can be very challenging. The list goes on, but try and just stick with one for now. Number 3, are there any threats, obstacles, or deterrents? This could be in the form of bandits perhaps blocking the road, or maybe there's a sleeping monster that's just outside of the cave entrance of where you need to go. Perhaps there's a rock or a mudslide that's blocking the entrance to a valley, or perhaps one of the deterrents is an item one of your characters is carrying.
It's cursed. Don't take it. Get rid of it. Get out.
And then number 4, what loot or treats are available during this encounter? And I say loot and treats kind of interchangeably. Of course, finding a bag of gold or potions is really cool and that's solid loot. However, a treat could also be something that clearly sticks out for your players to interact with. That could be the aforementioned gold or potions that are available somewhere on your terrain build map, or maybe it is a siege weapon that they can utilize to get the upper hand on their opponents. Maybe it's a magic crystal that if your players roll high enough check on, bestows 1d4 hit points to all of your team. Once I've considered these 4 questions, that's when I'll begin to fill out the details of my encounter. The majority of my sessions are done through what the hobby community refers to as theater of the mind. This basically means that we all use our imaginations to create the world in which we're playing. This is an incredibly powerful tool, and I definitely still use terrain in my RPG sessions. I'm just a little bit more careful about which ones I choose to build out for those sessions. However, for this video, I'll be building out 3 encounters using all of the terrain. Okay, not all of the terrain. A lot of the terrain that I built over the years as a GM. Oh, and one more thing before I start showing those examples. This is a really solid piece of advice that I heard somewhere on the internet. I don't know where it is, but props to whoever had first mentioned this. But this advice has really helped me to run better games. And that is delay combat. As a GM, you should really give your players every opportunity to sway the combat in some way before just calling for that initiative roll. And the reason you want to give them more of an opportunity to interact is because once you call for that roll to initiative, the game fundamentally changes. Combat should feel as though it is like a last resort, and there are so many opportunities for roleplay and alternatives and cool things that can happen prior to you rolling for initiative. Try this in your games and pay really close attention to that one moment where combat is inevitable. All right, let's bust out some encounters now. So our first note to take into consideration regarding my notes is the where. While we're at the Bandit Keep, what are we doing? We're acquiring the MacGuffin. What is the MacGuffin? Let's call it this diamond. Why not? What's the threat? We have a barricaded door, and we have arrow slits. And I made these little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots here, so I can just mark them off with a Sharpie, kind of like this. Once my players make enough high threshold attacks on the door to do enough damage to it. And then our treat is these breakable platforms with AC 10 that also have a 10 damage threshold. It only takes one hit though to break them down. That's just some fun little interaction the party can have with our battle map, which currently right now is completely empty. So let's go into a little YouTube magic here. I'm gonna build out this encounter really quick, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what we can do here. All right, pretty easy build. Where are we? We're at a Bandit's Keep. What's the goal? Well, the goal is to acquire MacGuffin, which is probably behind this door here. My players are currently entering from this position, and of course, we've only built this out after our combat encounter was inevitable. Perhaps theater of the mind wise, the party would have like tried to convince the bandit leader, which would probably be this dude right here, to open the doors, give them the MacGuffin, and they'll be on their way. And obviously they're saying no. So combat broke out. Maybe one of these archers fired a shot at them first, and we've rolled for initiative. There's a couple things to take into consideration here. First off, the threats are there are bandits inside the bandit keep, and they can shoot through arrow slits in each of these walls. I'd say there's probably one on each of the front sections and then two in the middle here. And then there's a raised platform on each side that flanks this sort of corridor here. I only have two little archer minis, so I'm using these skull dice that I got online to sort of represent enemies. I really like using these. These are super fun and great way to, if you're one of those lazy DMs, shout out to the lazy dungeon master who doesn't want to paint miniatures all the time. You can just do that, and you can even paint them different colors to sort of say, hey, this one's a red skull. This one's probably the boss man or boss monster. But yeah, you can use stuff like this to represent baddies if you don't have archers. Anyways, these platforms are going to be treated as the treats for this encounter, or loot, even though it's not really loot. But basically, the way these platforms work is when my party would show up, I'd say, hey, yeah, there's platforms, there's archers up there, and they don't look very sturdy. So a savvy player, maybe our ranger here, would be like, hey, I want to try and knock that platform down, shoot an arrow at it, well timed. And they would do that. Maybe they beat the AC 10 and they do 10 damage in one hit, and that breaks this platform down, effectively dropping both of our enemies prone, and they're going to take, it's 20 feet up, so they would take 2d6 damage, which would give our barbarian a chance to run up and smash some skulls in. Of course, this whole time arrows are flying at both sides, and they have to still get through this door, which is another threat. This door takes at least 5 attacks to get through it that are over 10 damage per hit. And I'm just telling the party this. This isn't like a secret. I've learned that sometimes it's better to just tell your players, like, hey, here's how this mechanic works, and play it out. Good luck. Use your skills to the best of your ability. There's no reason to hide that the door takes a certain number of hits to get through it. I would just tell them. Now they know, okay, we got to get through here. Maybe once this platform drops down, the rogue is like, cool, can I like run up the broken platform and get up on top and sneak inside that way? I would say, sure, you could try. And they would jump up there, and the rogue finds a way to get inside and, can drop down here. But yeah, this would be a fun little like siege encounter, except instead of your players defending, you're actually on the offense. Yeah, there we go. Encounter number 1. Steal it, add it to your games, do what you will. Maybe instead of arrows, you're using fire magic. That could be fun. Anyways, let's go on to the next one. All right, encounter number 2. So for this encounter, we are going to be doing something a little bit different. Our players just came down a section here. We're just going to use these stairs, and I'm going to try to kind of build this out on this Ultimate Dungeon terrain. It's not going to be as easy in my opinion, but we're going to do the best we can. So we'll say the players just finished killing a bullet, which is like a large subterranean terrifying creature, and they are trying to escape a collapsing cave. I'm literally making this up on the fly as we go about it. There we go. That seems fun. And this is just room number 1. So where are our players? Here's our players. They just came down And we're actually going to start them back up very, very highest point. And the reason I'm doing this is we have to identify our new where, our new what, our new threat, and our new treat. We're going to say that this is room number 1. We'll use that little dice right there to mark it. Room number 1 of 3. Why not? Let's do 3. So where are we? Well, we're underground after killing that bullet. And what's the purpose? What's the goal of this encounter? Well, our players are escaping from this cave that is now collapsing all around them, and they're at risk of being buried alive here. So I would say the purpose and the goal of this encounter is to get from point A to point B. We'll say that this is point B over here. But really it's more like, this is just one of 3 rooms. So point B is continuing on this way. And why this sort of encounter could be fun to run in initiative is because there are threats that are currently happening, and going through a turn-based sort of system helps to kind of sell home that point of escaping and having things still go wrong. A lot of people will just kind of use exposition and say, cool, well, the temple or the cave is collapsing and you all run out quickly and you escape. What? Where's the fun in that? What are we talking about? We're talking about threats. Threats. We're talking about practice. Some of you might get that reference. Not everyone will, though. So what's the threat? Well, this is a rock. It's not. It's foam. But this is basically a rock. And there are rocks falling from the ceiling on top of our party as they're trying to escape. And every, let's say, D4 rounds, we'll use a classic D4 timer. Cool. Every 3 rounds for this first one, all the players are going to have to make a dexterity saving throw to avoid rocks falling and hitting them. And we're going to make this be an exciting one. Let's say our party's level 5. Level 5 seems good. Now, a great sword attack is 2d6 damage. These are large rocks, and I want to put the pressure on to move. So we're going to say 2d8 damage instead. If you fail your dex save, you're going to take 2d8 damage. And remember, they're badly injured. They just fought a bullet. They are low on resources. 2d8 is a scary amount of damage. So in 3 rounds, that's going to happen. To make matters worse, and also because as a DM, it's really frustrating having to keep rebuilding an encounter. I wouldn't build this out if they weren't going to be here for a minute. We're going to make everything in here difficult terrain, which means their speed is halved. And that means, if we're going to measure out, since I don't use the grid system, I just don't like it as much. I know how long 3 inches is by looking at it. That's 1, 2, 3. I could say, if this guy's got 30 speed, he can go 1, 2, 3. That's 15 feet, and that's considered difficult terrain. That's as far as they can go. So each turn, unless they're dashing, and if he's dashing up to the edge, now he can't jump this gap. Distance-wise, I'm just gonna kind of ignore the long distance jumping capabilities here and just say, yeah, if you want to jump that gap, you have to make an athletics check. But before we even get to that point of how we solve this, sorry for my scatterbrainedness, we have to also talk about what the treat is, because there is going to be a treat. And maybe it's not here. Maybe the treat is that all they have to do is this one check and then continue moving on and avoid the damage. That seems pretty easy. Or maybe it actually, we'll use this as the marker, but do I have a treasure chest token? I don't. I like to use these gold tokens. These little pieces are great to mark points of interest. So I would just drop this here and my players would be like, oh, what's that? I'd be like, oh, there's actually like a bunch of loot right here. It's locked down. You can't move it, but you can sit there and try to open it if you want to risk taking this 2d8 damage continually. So it's a treat, but it's also a distraction. Of course, I would put something good in here. So maybe there's 2d8 gold as well as a potion of healing or 2 in there. That's super generous, but hey, time is of the essence here. So this is room 1. Players are going to try and jump this gap. They may try to help each other out going down these stairs, and you can basically just take your rounds over and over and over again as they hop the gap, move here, move here, move here, move here. And once all of them get to this point, you can move on to the next room, which I'll build out in a second. Of course, every full round, you don't have monsters that are running. You're just ticking this timer down to 2, and then to 1, and then to 0. And at 0, well, what happens? Everyone's gonna roll their dex save. If you fail the dex save, let's make it, let's start it at 12. You fail your dex save at 12, you take the 2/8 damage. And each time you re-roll this timer die, this time it's a 4, lucky them, that DC is gonna increase. We're not gonna do 12, we're gonna do 13 now, and then 14, and then 15. So you're on a timer here. You gotta get moving. Cool, so that's first room. We're gonna go on to the second one now. All right, so our party just made it through room 1. We're now on room 2. Our timer die is just gonna kind of continue on. So it was a 1 on the last room. We're gonna continue on with a 1 here. In this particular scenario, we got another little bridge here. This is a sturdy bridge. Players can get across this no problem. Again, it's difficult terrain, so they're only actually moving, 1, 2, 3 inches. As so. The thing that would be fun here is I think it would be practical to say, if you happen to be on this bridge when this timer goes off, which it will now, if you're on this bridge and you actually fail your deck save to avoid those rocks crushing you, not only are you taking damage, but this bridge will break and you're at risk for falling into the darkness of the abyss below. Fun times, I love it. So I'll just roll that really quick. Let's see. Oh, we can't even see it. It is a 10. I thought it was a 20. Yeah, we'll say that beats it, even though it was a, see, we said increases, so that was a 13. We'll say they have a +3 dex, so they actually did meet the save. They're gonna jump out of the way here. However, our barbarian, his dex isn't very good. He's gonna fail the save, take the damage, and then now the bridge is gonna break. And since they're both on the bridge, we're just gonna take that bridge off. And they're both now at risk for falling into the abyss down below. I would just say an athletics check easily of a DC 10, and they can climb and pull themselves back up, or if they get help. If they fail it 3 times, then they're just going to fall to their death, which gives the players a little bit of a chance. Because remember, each turn they have to make this deck save, or actually, we have to roll the timer die. 3, even better. Each turn they have to roll that timer die and just see what happens after that. So now there's this huge gap that they have to cross. However, our treat, which is this gold token, is actually a convenient broken piece of rope from the last group of adventurers that tried to climb through here. And it's pretty old, but maybe somebody light or super dexterous could jump on it, swing across this gap, no problem, and can start working on this door, because this door is another issue blocking the path. There's a lot more complexity with this room. I think because of that, we have the risk here, we have the risk of the rope falling, we have the door. This room would be a little bit more complex. I would probably ease up on them for the third room, depending on how well the traversing is going. So maybe our rogue rolls super well, jumps on the rope, swings across, gets over here, and then lands. Or maybe they don't, and the rope actually breaks, but the rogue is dexterous and they're able to make it to the other side. Well, now the party has to figure this out, and the rogue can get to work trying to unlock this door to save everybody time, while this timer just keeps ticking down. And then now we have another situation where they're either going to jump this gap or they're going to carefully try to walk along this ledge with the dexterity check and try to make it. Again, as this timer ticks down, there's a chance that this bridge could also break away. Eventually, though, the party will make their way all the way over here, and hopefully by now, the rogue has opened this door and we can continue on to our third encounter here under our cave escape version mode thing. Let's move on to number 3. All right. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, you've seen that I'm using the same pieces of terrain each room, but each time I'm orienting it slightly different. When you're using a circle like this for your main base, it's helpful to kind of do this sort of zigzag S pattern. I mean, maybe I would turn it like this, just so you're like maximizing the space here. I understand how this can be limiting in some regards based on the terrain that you have. I just like this because Ultimate Dungeon terrain is small and it's compact and it works for me when I have like this sort of cave with the bottomless pit sort of situation happening. I'm probably going to be building a wilderness terrain one as well as like a snow-based terrain one. This thing is just so cheap to make, I could just make a whole bunch of them. Whereas this mat that we're playing on is pretty dang expensive. I can make, 30 of these for the cost of one of these. So yeah, anyways, let's continue on. Our players get here, we're on the third room. All they have to do is run across this section. The last room had a lot of difficulty. Perhaps here they're just using their actions to dash, and we're getting here to the end, and then we have another locked door. Okay, and this is ticked down. They've taken even more damage. We're gonna roll it again. And again, we're getting lucky here with the 3s, but this could easily be a 1, and then another 1, and then another 1. And that's 2, 4, 6 D8 damage that they would have taken. I like to leave it up to the dice. The players have a lot of resources available to them. I think that they could figure this out and heal and make it out of here, and that's part of the fun of this 3-tier, 3-room encounter, where you're just moving along a path at half speed in initiative and trying to get to the door. And of course, once they break through this door, your party has successfully escaped and hopefully had a very memorable encounter and maybe snagged a couple potions of healing along the way. So before we go on to the next encounter, the YouTube analytics have told me that about 86% or so of the people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to my channel. You don't need to subscribe, but it would really help me out if you did, because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying to see if this YouTube thing is really for me or not. So if you like my content and you are watching and you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and help me out. I greatly appreciate your patronage. Thank you. All right, on to encounter number 3. For this one, the things to really take into consideration is that this is a wilderness escape scenario. So where are my party? Well, my party right now, they're currently in the middle of goblin territory, deep in the woods, and they are fleeing from a massive army of goblins. What's their goal? Well, their goal is to get to this fortress. Boom, an ancient ruined outpost that was once there in the forest generations ago, and they're going to hold up here with the hopes that their spellcasting friend in 10 rounds will be able to cast a teleportation circle and get them all back home safely. So what's the threat? Well, here's our threat. Hella goblins and an ogre. I'll build this whole thing out so you can see what this looks like. But every round we're going to have tons of goblins be showing up. I'm going to use a bunch of these skull dice to kind of show that they are continually coming each round and try to stop our party from escaping. And what is our treat? Well, our treat is going to be a couple things. But first, before we get into the treat, let's build out this encounter first. All right, so our party members, we're going to have probably one over here, one over here, here. Archer's probably up there, and then our caster's gonna go right here inside our fortress. So as I stated before, there are a couple treats here. The first treat is I'm gonna put this token right on top of this rock here, right on top of this column, and one more on top of this column. Now the reason these are set up is because this is considered interactable terrain, where if a player were to succeed on a proper strength check, they could actually knock this pillar over, doing a ton of damage to some goblins, and also effectively blocking this path and making it difficult terrain for them to encroach on the party, which is good. So a smart crew will utilize those to the best of their abilities. Aside from these two columns that can be tipped over to block the affected paths, this boulder here will also be able to be tipped over and block this path here. Additionally, I have a fun little ballista here that the party can interact with. And we'll just say that that's also a treat. And this is like an arrow volley ballista. With one action to load it, you can use another action, and everyone within we'll say a 15-foot area within range of this ballista will have to make a dex save to take 3d6 damage if they fail. I would just make that up because, you want these siege weapons to kind of be cool. Otherwise, why would your party interact with it? Probably have group of goblins here, group of goblins coming from over here. We're going to have a group of goblins coming from the southeast, represented by these skulls. Here is our D10 timer dice. We'll just put this down over, we'll put it on top of the compass. How's that? That way we know. In 10 rounds, our caster has to finish casting the spell. If the caster takes any damage, instead of just restarting it, because this encounter will very quickly become dangerous, we'll just tick this counter back up one if they take any damage for whatever reason. Of course, after we roll initiative, goblins are going to arrive. I would give my party a couple moments to kind of make some preparations before this encounter happens. And if they wanted to, they could try to tip these over. However, who knows? Maybe your party strategically wants to knock this over here and knock this one over here and then fight that way, That way they only have 2 spots to really have to deal with. Or maybe your party will save them, want to tip them over to crush some of the goblins that are coming in. The best part is your party gets to decide what to do, and your barbarian can choose to break this wall and have this giant boulder come crushing down and block the goblins whenever they see fit. I would set this up so that every 2 rounds, another D6 goblins will spawn in one of the 3 entrances. So we'll say this is entrance A, entrance B, and entrance C. And if we were to roll a D6, cool. So we got 6 goblins coming from this side. And then every round, this dice will just keep ticking down to a 9. And hopefully your party survives and teleports out of here with whatever it is they stole or were trying to run away from. Yeah, steal this. Use it for your game. You can also use it on these giant big boards. I like to do it occasionally for these really big epic fights. I also sometimes just like to use a small little tiny board. So to each their own. Anyways, that's it. So that's actually 3 solid encounters. Feel free to use them in your campaign. I hope it improves your sessions. Yeah, now go stop watching this. Go play D&D. Video's over. Bye. I greatly appreciate your patronage. Thank you.